myself and my colleague Miles Messenger. So Miles, are you happy to share the presentation?
Yes, I'm just working out how to do that. Just bear with me for 1 second.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay. That should now be working.
Fantastic. Yep. Right, okay, so thank you everybody. So South Cambs Hall is our flagship HQ building located in Camborne. In 2019, South Cambs District Council declared a carbon emergency, and achieving zero carbon is central to its corporate business plan. Modern construction techniques allow us to build net zero carbon buildings, but it's predicted that around 80% of the buildings that will exist in 2050 are already built. Fantastic. Okay, so South Cambs Hall is our main base of operations from which we deliver a whole host of services to the communities we serve. It's a landmark from which we want to showcase what the council can do for energy conservation measures. So our vision is that South Cambs Hall becomes an example of best practice in the field of energy efficiency, energy generation, and green energy storing and sharing. Sorry, just having slight technical trouble with having lost the view of my slideshow. Sorry, everybody. Right, Miles, is that over to you to introduce the next slide?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My internet just seems to have ducked out for a second. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So sorry. So as Kate mentioned previously, yes, so Bouygues is South Cambs District Council's delivery partner for energy efficiency and renewable energy measures, and we deliver that under an energy performance contracting approach. What that means in practice is that we're conceiving, designing, developing and delivering projects, but then we're also monitoring, measuring and guaranteeing the performance of the assets in operation. So it's a whole life model whereby essentially the engineers are taking full responsibility for the delivery of what are often quite novel and innovative schemes. So we start off by analysing a building's energy performance, really getting into the roots of the electricity and gas
Sorry, Miles, we've lost you there.
Baselining and so on. That enables target specific measures to then reduce the energy demands. We're going. Oh, my back.
You are back, I think.
I'm so sorry. Just always happens at the worst of times. We then go through to actually deliver the projects that we've designed, and then we go.
Hi, Miles. Sorry, I think we've lost you again.
Performance guarantee.
I think this is
measuring the energy performance of all of the aspects.
Miles, can you dial in? Sorry, everybody. The joys of doing a webinar from home, I'm afraid. Good old internet. I think now children have gone back to school and are all using Google Classrooms. It's taken the bandwidth. Okay, so it appears from my screen that we've lost the presentation. Is that correct, from my other co-hosts? Okay. Bear with me a second. I will just...
Gosh, I'm so sorry. Am I back in the room?
You are, Miles, but we've lost the presentation.
Yes.
I'm going to get it up on my screen.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've just completely lost. If you could, that would be very helpful. It might protect some of my internet. Again, apologies.
Yeah, not a problem at all. These things happen. Bear with me a second. We can overcome them. So I think, can we all see that now?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, okay, let me just catch up to where we were. I think, do you just want to quickly just recap this slide for us, Miles? That would be fantastic.
I will do my best. If my internet fails again, then we might have to give up. But yes, as I was saying, so Bouygues Energies and Services, we are South Cambs delivery partner for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects under an energy performance contracting approach, which essentially means that we take on the full responsibility right from the conception of projects all the way through to delivery and then into the ongoing operation of the measures after they're installed. We're guaranteeing that they perform in a certain way. So that means that we're taking from analysing the energy performance of the building all the way through to targeting and options appraisals for what the best technology fit will be. Then forward, if we carry on clicking through, there we go, through the design of the measures, the delivery of the measures, and then afterwards, then measuring the performance of how they're performing. Okay. So we understood that the main core aspects of the brief were to minimize the building's carbon footprint, to minimize the primary energy demands, that's gas and electricity, maximize renewable energy generation, and also meet the council's investment criteria. That means that there needed to be a return on the investment that we're making through the energy savings that we're making and the renewable energy generation as well. This required that we took a holistic approach to the building, looking at all of the aspects of energy demand and supply, to create essentially a system of different measures that were all going to complement one another to maximize their energy performance, essentially. Okay. So what this looks like in practice, this is essentially a plan view of the South Cambs Hall site, just going around the clock, as it were, to go through the different measures. We started off with LED lighting, a complete replacement of all of the fluorescent lighting with LED technology. It's something that we're all familiar with, major electricity saving just by making that one move, with some smart controls again that react to the environment. One of the major parts of this project is replacing the existing old gas boilers with a ground source heat pump system and a thermal store. The thermal store is acting like a battery. The ground source heat pump is essentially drawing heat from the ground and then converting it into a usable form of heat for the building. That's backed up with a smart energy system called an energy management system. And that's essentially controlling all of the ventilation and heating plants to minimize essentially excess energy expenditure wherever possible to keep the thermal comfort of the building. Alongside that, we did a number of upgrades to the ventilation system to minimize its electricity demand and make sure it controls heat in the best way possible. Similarly, improve the efficiency of the cooling system as well. We then have a carport system. I've gone round the clock a bit, I'm afraid, but it's a solar carport. Essentially, this is like a solar rooftop array, but raised. It's a raised carport, so it's in the car park itself. And that's then supported with integrated electric vehicle chargers. which are then essentially self-served from the solar PV that's generating. That's all tied into the building. What we can see in the sort of the red square, the rectangle there, is that's where the ground loops are installed. For us, what's, I suppose, looking at this from a top-down perspective, we're making use of the car park in the best way we can to then serve the building with low carbon electricity and heat. And for that, that was, for an engineer's perspective, that was our main goal, is to use the asset as in the best way we can. Okay. Now if you click, yep, that's it. So this is just a visual of the solar carport in practice. So as you can see, it's sort of a solar farm raised on stilts almost, so you can still park your car underneath. We click again. And then the integrated electric vehicle charging, then self-serve from the carport. And then underneath the ground, we then have this array of boreholes that are drawing heat from the ground and then serving it to the building. Now, what this means through all of these projects is we're generating we're halving the carbon emissions, the carbon footprint of the building day one. But over the course of the next few decades, because the grid is going to be decarbonising, we see that the overall footprint of the building is continuing to reduce over this term. Now, the do nothing approach, which is shown in the lighter green, you can see that we're getting to around 56% carbon reduction just by doing nothing. And that's because of the electricity decarbonising over the years. But we can see that because the building is still using a substantial amount of gas, it's not getting all the way there. It's not reaching the net zero goal by quite a long way. So really, by doing this substantial work today, not least are we saving all of this carbon in the interim between now and 2050, but we're also basically making it fit for the future. It's near net zero by the time that we get to 2050. Okay.
Okay, so I will move on to the challenges that we faced with the project so far. So one of the first challenges was regulatory changes during the life of sorting out the investment grade proposal and all of the proposals that we had to bring forward. So we had to keep up with those. The evolving brief. So we had growing ambitions to start with at the conception of this idea for the project. Members gave us a brief of rather more sort of conservative energy saving measures. But as climate change and the climate emergency came to the forefront of everybody's minds, it changed member ambitions. And so the ambition now is to try and get to net carbon zero by 2050. So we had to encompass that. Project interdependencies. So the life of the building means that there is actually essential work that needs to be carried out this year while this retrofit project is going on. So one of the challenges is managing all of those work streams, especially in light of a pandemic. So we have curtain walling issues, we have glazing issues, there's all sorts of issues that we have within the building that to keep it safe and to keep it a viable building, the projects need to continue hand in hand with the work packages for this project. There's been Brexit, so uncertainty, emerging risks to contracts, increase of prices and delays on goods at ports. And then finally, COVID. How could we ignore that one? Finalising contracts in a pandemic was challenging, to say the least. And not only that, even managing, we're reaching the mobilisation stage of the project. Hopefully we're all seeing a slight easing or dates where the easing of social restrictions will come in, but actually what it means to us right now is we have to stay safe and ensure that all site workers are maintaining social distance from each other, from themselves, from workers within the building. So yeah, COVID has been a challenge as well. So what lessons have we learned so far from this project? One of the big wins has been the collaborative partnership that we have, that SCDC has with Bouygues. It's been a really good energy partnership for the project, and we've been on the same page, which has really helped align our ambitions. Because of that, we've been able to have regular and transparent communication. So currently we have project board meetings every 2 weeks. I have project manager meetings every other week in between those. And because we're all on the same page, the communication and problem solving is second to none. As I've previously mentioned, alignment of agendas. So it really works that both the client and the contractor have the same goal in mind. And with Bouygues being invested in underwriting the savings that we can make, it kind of gives them more of that aligned, I suppose, to the council's objectives. And we have a real, the whole project team has a real collective problem solving can-do attitude. So we're really keen to overcome problems and get things done, and that's been a really good lesson to take forward. The negative lessons, so the big one has to be contracts, delays in legal and commercial negotiations. They always take longer than what you imagine on something like this. So it's just allowing for that extra time, and also COVID hasn't helped negotiations, contract signing, etc., while we're all working remotely as we are. An optimism bias, as you may have seen from the positive lesson learned, we are all really positive and behind this project. The whole project board team is absolutely enthused, and it's been a real driver for the project. However, that optimism bias has meant that we probably haven't been as good as we should have been with predicting the worst. And so, for example, with COVID last year, when sort of we were locked down, we sort of saw the short term on that and maybe didn't predict that lockdown would continue into 2021, and perhaps we should have. And so I think the lesson learned there is, when you're running a project like this, or any project, is to be pessimistic and to try and contain some of that enthusiasm. That's a really good driver, and just be mindful of always looking on the worst case scenario. And then finally, the last one would be managing stakeholder expectations. And I think specifically here, member expectations, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's amazing that members have got behind this project within South CAMBS. However, it is just that delay between the ideas that members have and the enthusiasm and the drive for this project to actually boots on ground. So the project has probably been over a year in its inception, and we're only just beginning to mobilise. And so I think there is just that management of expectations as to when these energy conservation measures will be introduced. So moving on to the economic deliverables, this is a long-term investment. It's a long-term relationship. There's not really any gimmicky quick wins here. We've got a really good partnership with Bouygues. We're investing in really good long-term energy conservation measures, which will sustain us for the next 30 years. And I think that's key here. It's not kind of a gimmick that's going to be out of date in a couple of years. It will mean that it's a long-term investment. It is commercially viable, and it will, over the course of the life, pay for itself. Miles, is there anything further you wanted to say on this slide before I move on?
I've been nervous to say anything just because of my internet connection, but yeah, that's quite right. I mean, these are because these have a very long lifetime associated with them. We can take a longer term view on their payback and what have you. So it's a good solid project that has a good return on investment over a longer period than perhaps one might consider for projects of this nature. Historically, projects have been sort of 3 to 5 years. These are longer term than that, but still good economically overall. Yeah.
Okay, so that's our final slide. So coming soon, probably mobilisation starting at the moment, with work continuing throughout the year, with an end date probably this time next year. Okay, so thank you very much. As I say, we'll take questions and answers on that at the end. I apologise for the internet connection there, and we've probably overrun slightly because of that. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ethne.
Thanks very much. I'll just get my slides loaded up. There we go. Is everyone able to see those?
Yes.
Smiles, lovely, thank you. So yes, conscious of time, I will try and fly through this, but please do feel free to contact me afterwards if you have any questions, anything that's not clear or you'd like to hear more about. So my name's Ethne George. I'm the Programme Director at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership for the Accelerator and Sustainability Hub. And my team works exclusively with small and medium-sized enterprises in sustainability. And we are working across 10 sort of interlinked and overlapping sustainability themes where we think there's a great need for innovation in order to help the world achieve not only our climate goals, but also our nature goals to ensure that we avoid mass extinction of very many species. 1 in 8 is currently threatened with extinction, but also we do also believe that sustainability is absolutely about the people side as well. It is about inclusive societies, and inclusive societies are more resilient and more diverse than is commonly found. So we work across these 10 themes and we run accelerator programs. So these accelerator programs have been running virtually, obviously in 2020, and will probably continue in that vein in 2021. And our funding for these comes partly from the EU. Despite Brexit, we obviously had some funding that the UK government had contributed to already before Brexit. So this will continue for the next 2 to 3 years running these sorts of programs. And we particularly want to reach out to businesses within the Greater Cambridgeshire, Greater Peterborough area. Last year, we ran some to do with sustainability issues in the fashion supply chain. Again, that covered a range of issues, not only climate, but also related to modern slavery and other aspects that are problematic within the fashion sector. And we attracted lots of really fantastic businesses with new ideas on how you share clothes rather than buy new all the time, and all sorts of other things that are really sort of up and coming now. We also ran a program, Innovators for Change, in the wake, it just came out pretty much in the first lockdown, to do with different ways we could make society more resilient. So we had AI technology helping to detect hate speech and fake news on the internet, and people with using deep ice technology from the University of Cambridge to make sure that vaccines arrive in a usable condition in remote areas. And a high percentage of vaccines actually don't arrive in a fit state to be used in those sorts of locations. So there will be more of these around our 10 themes. We'll be doing more in fashion, but we'll be working across a range of different sectors. Our big themes for 2021 are net zero, so how to decarbonise globally, and also built environment. And in the built environment, obviously there's a strong climate aspect, businesses that are needed to help in that sector, but it's also about the nature impacts and also the sort of diversity within the built environment, so the construction sector, particularly in the UK. So there'll be more information shortly on our website about those programs, in case you're interested in, or you have a sort of business that would benefit from this. And they're virtual programs of sort of between 12 and 20 hours of business support. And you receive mentoring as well through our international network of different practitioners. We're also nominators for these Earthshot prizes that were launched in November last year, supposedly the largest environmental prizes in history. So they're global prizes. There are 5 categories, as you can see from the slide, each with £1 million prize. And the idea is that there will be 10 rounds of these to help us with this sort of decade of opportunity that we're already into, is already elapsing. So these are ideas. What they're really looking for is either projects, businesses, collaborations, where there's real potential to make a dent, which is, it's a hard thing to do, but in any of these problems, and a real opportunity to scale. So look out sort of next September, October time when we call for new applications for that. We'll also be working in China, so a lot of our programs link to programs we'll be running in China, very much the same sort of thing, and then we'll be linking the different cohorts so that they can benefit from each other and each other's sort of investment networks and all sorts of things. So again, if your business, you think, you have a strong sustainability offering and you feel like there could be a market opportunity in China, please do reach out to us. That's part of what our program is here to do, is help UK businesses access new markets at this incredibly hard time with Brexit. We do run other programs. There's a variety of other things that go on at CISL. This is something that my team doesn't run, but and I'm afraid isn't free. Our other programs are currently free because of the nature of the funding. But the Sustainability Labs are 2-day sessions that certainly for larger SMEs or larger companies you may be interested in. There's a connection on there, an email address if you want to find out more. And there's, obviously more information on our website too. So one of the things I really wanted to focus on with the brief time I have left is this program that's coming. So we've been commissioned to design with a American not-for-profit organization a free online course in how to decarbonize for SMEs. That's something that we're just starting work on now. We plan to launch the pilot by September. So we'll have done some mini pilots before then. But if you're interested in accessing the course at that point, please do register your interest by emailing us at Accelerator, that email address there, preferably with the online training course in the subject heading, and we will alert you when it's available to do it. So we're hoping to get at least a couple of thousand SMEs through that before COP26 in November. There'll be a much bigger launch of it by then, and we hope that will really help it to reach a really large audience globally. And it will be featured, the intention is that it will be located on the SME Climate Hub website. That's a relatively new website set up by the International Chambers of Commerce, and it has a whole variety of tools sort of handpicked and checked by Oxford University that are available to, particularly to SMEs, to help them with the decarbonisation process, all of which are free. And then finally, we will be retrofitting this building, so another green building for the Cambridgeshire area. This is the old telephone exchange building on Regent Street. We're going to be doing, or we are in the process of doing, a passive house retrofit that should be the UK's leading passive house retrofit for an office building when it's complete. We're also targeting BREEAM Outstanding, if that means anything to you, but it's all the other sustainability issues to do with buildings. And then we're also targeting the WELL standard, which is a relatively new standard for health and well-being for the building occupants too. The reason I mention this is it won't just be our office, it will also host a kind of a co-working space or incubator for SMEs to locate in and sort of hot desk from, or have a more permanent desk in. So there'll be 50 desks of that type in there, right in the centre of Cambridge. And hopefully the advantage of being in there with us will be that you get access to our sort of, again, international network of businesses. So we work a lot with large corporations and finance institutions and policymakers and all sorts. So we're developing a number of sort of membership types so that people can access those sorts of events and make those connections that may be useful to their business and scale up new sustainability business ideas and ventures. So look out for that. It will be available probably from this time next year, so probably January in 2022. And just to say thank you very much, and apologies if I was going at breakneck speed, but I wanted to make sure there's enough time for my fellow panelists to speak. My contact details are at the bottom, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ethne. That was really interesting. So I'll go straight over to Claire.
Sorry, just get myself unmuted there. I didn't want to unmute for a second. Hopefully everybody can see my first slide. So as Kate said earlier, I've been working for several years now, helping businesses to put in place environmental management systems, or EMSs. I joined IIE, or Investors in the Environment, at the start of 2020. And IIE offers support putting in place environmental management systems and then gaining accreditation to IIE standards. So the standards are designed to align with ISO 14001, which you may have heard of, but to be more streamlined, more cost effective, and overall more achievable for smaller and less complex organisations that don't have a specific need for ISO 14001, but want to access some of the benefits of having an EMS in place. So I will be talking about today why you might be interested in greening your business, how to go about doing that through first looking at what your impacts are, what your goals are, and then I'll have a look at the key elements of an EMS. I'll have a look at what businesses can benefit from an EMS through the lens of looking at a bit of an overview of a couple of the businesses that I've worked with over the last year. And at the end, I'll talk very briefly about how IIE can help if you would like to go down that route. So in terms of the drivers for taking part, why a business might want to green their business, it used to be when I started out working in EMS that there was only really two main drivers that people were coming to us with, and both of them really boiled down to money. Either a direct financial motive of wanting to cut costs through resource efficiency, because that can save your business hundreds, if not thousands of pounds, or in terms of increased, being able to market yourself either to new clients, sort of the green pound, if you will, or perhaps maintaining custom. And that's particularly been important when places like Marks and Spencer's and local authorities now require often some kind of either accredited environmental management system or as a minimum some kind of commitment to reducing your environmental impact. Legal compliance can be a driver for some, or something that the benefit is felt once they start putting an EMS in place. It might be that some people approach schemes like ours after they've been slapped with a fine, or perhaps because they're more forward thinking and they've realised they need to comply with new legislation, something like SECA. But we have less people approaching us for that reason. What I really am seeing more of nowadays is people approaching us just because staff are more aware of environmental issues like climate change and single-use plastic, etc. And they really want their business to be doing more about it. So team engagement is really important. It's a big benefit of running an EMS. So the first step in an EMS is always to identify where your organisation is now, and to do so fairly non-judgmentally, so not kind of trying to say, oh, we're doing really badly or really well, but just to identify where you are. So this diagram that's up on the screen now shows you some of the direct or indirect impacts, aspects of your organisation that might have an impact on the environment. And what you want to do is you want to have a bit of a look at those and consider which of those are your most significant. So that might be in terms of the largest impact, and also in terms of those that you have the most direct control over. So a lot of our members are perhaps tenants of buildings rather than owning the buildings, so they wouldn't want to do a massive investment programme like Kate and Miles were talking about, but they might want to focus more on things like travel and procurement, and do certain things probably still on energy, and perhaps look to work with their landlords to look at the building, but their primary focus might be on the things that they have more significant control over. So you also want to be thinking about what your big environmental goals are. Different businesses are going to have different goals depending on their initial drivers. So some might be just looking to cut costs. Some might be wanting to make sure they're ticking certain boxes that their customers or suppliers want them to tick. But the common goals are going to be to address the significant impacts that were identified in the previous steps. So we're getting more and more businesses approaching us that are really quite ambitious and looking to maybe become carbon neutral or carbon positive, or more broadly become a regenerative business, and that's really great, and we like to encourage them with those ambitions. We also encourage businesses to think about aligning their goals with much broader UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I've got up on the screen at the moment, so that they're working towards part of a much broader vision. But if your goals are less ambitious and more pragmatic, that's fine too. There's some great benefits from having an EMS for you as well. So once you've worked those things out, the impacts and goals, it's time to put the EMS in place. And it may well be that some people think, oh, what's the point of having an EMS? Let's just get on with it. Let's put in the new LED lighting. Let's get people recycling. Let's buy some solar panels. Let's offset, etc. And that can be a good start and give some really nice quick wins. But generally, an EMS provides a more effective way to make beneficial changes within an organisation. It's much more systematic and helps you to work out how best to reduce your impacts whilst also working towards other company overarching objectives. So it's not just about discrete actions, it's a whole business approach. So up on the screen in front of you, I'm showing you these are kind of the basic elements of an EMS that we help our businesses to put in place. We've got guidelines and templates and things for the businesses that join us. And it might be that you don't require all of these things straight away, especially if some of these on the right-hand side. You might decide to wait until later to put some of those in place. It's not necessarily a linear process either, so the communication and engagement should be happening right from the start. All of these documents should align with each other. So obviously the policy would outline your sort of scope and commitments, and then that should be followed through in terms of what resources you choose to monitor and measure, the targets you set, and the action plan that you create. What businesses can benefit from the EMS? Well, really, the quick answer to that is all organisations. I'm focusing on 2 SMEs that I've worked with because I think this is predominantly aimed at SMEs, but we do also work with larger organisations like universities and hospitals. And an EMS is a flexible framework, so it can be adapted for everyone. So this is one of our members. It's a larger manufacturing business, over 200 employees. I've popped up their carbon footprint on here. They've chosen scope 1 and 2 and only one of their scope 3 impacts, which is the transport, I think. Yes, mileage they've got in there. And what they've focused on this year, they've been working on their EMS for 3 years now, and they've got green accreditation, and they've really focused on the monitoring side of things. And I mentioned monitoring earlier. It can be something that sounds kind of boring. It can be a difficult sell, but it's really important in terms of being able to measure progress. It's really important, obviously, if you want to calculate your carbon footprint, because you need to put that data into the carbon footprint calculations. But also, it can be really useful. What this business did really well this year is they monitored how much energy and gas and waste was produced per product that they're producing. And they asked themselves, why is this fluctuating? Why are we producing different amounts of waste or using different amounts of electricity? And then they use the answers to those questions to optimize processes. So it might be that a certain member of staff is operating and doing things in a certain way that's much more efficient than doing it another way. So make sure all staff are doing that. It might be setting up machinery in a certain way. It might be that machinery needs repairs or even replacing. But they've done that really well, and they're going to do, I think they've still got a way to go. They've got more savings that can be made, but you can see hopefully down here some of the savings that they've made, particularly with reducing their waste. 75% reduction in waste is terrific. So that's just one organisation. So their carbon footprint is 253 tonnes. Contrast that against the second organisation. So this is a much smaller organisation. They're office-based as well. So they don't have as many inputs or outputs to their business. Their carbon footprint is only 6.1 tonnes. And I just wanted to make the point that it doesn't make the organisation before a bad organisation. They actually manufacture products that have been in really high demand by the NHS in the fight against COVID. So a really important organisation. And it also doesn't mean that these smaller organisations should just say, oh, well, my footprint isn't that big. You know, this one's 6.1 tonnes. That's less than a household annual carbon emissions on average. But it doesn't mean they're just resting on their laurels and saying, oh, well, we'll just maintain as we are. They're still trying to improve. The FSB stated that at the start of 2020, around 99.3% of businesses had less than 50 employees. And a lot of those will be office-based as well. So they're also going to have small carbon footprints like this one. So collectively, if all of those businesses are working to reduce their carbon footprint, that has got a really big impact. So this business, they're still working really hard, even though they've been running their EMS now for over 10 years, and they're looking in really tight detail at things like even the sustainability of their biscuits and teas and coffees. And when they replaced their heating system a couple of years ago, they opted for a wood-fired stove that they could heat with sustainably produced and locally sourced wood. So they're still really trying hard, and at the moment they're doing some really great stuff, sharing green working tips for all their staff that are working from home. So just to very briefly mention some of the support about that IIE provide. We do events, we provide one-to-one support to our members and accreditation to IIE standards. We've got 3 accreditation levels, starting with bronze and then working up through silver and up to green. If you do want more information, there's loads of information available on our website. You can check out our other members on the green directory, case studies, blog posts, general info, etc. We've also recently reinvigorated our YouTube channel, and we've got some recordings that we've done over the last 6 months with some really great guest speakers. They're all free. If you do want to get in touch, feel free to email me at the email address given, and obviously I'm happy to answer any questions in just a minute. And I'll hand over to Anthony now. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Can I just get confirmation that everyone can hear me okay? Because thank you, Claire. And thank you for the presentation, Claire. Some real food for thought there. I'm going to bring things back now to kind of energy efficiency and renewable energy. Just to briefly reintroduce myself. So my name's Anthony Goff. I'm the SME grant scheme manager for something called the Eastern New Energy Programme, which I'll introduce to you in just a moment. I work for an organisation called PECT. You may have heard of Peterborough Environment City Trust. We are now more commonly known as PECT to reflect the fact that we're not just a Peterborough-based organisation and not just indeed Cambridgeshire. We have projects now across the whole of the UK, and we even have 2 international projects. looking at recycling and the circular economy and food waste. So that's just to briefly introduce me and the organisation I'm from. I'm going to talk to you now, obviously, about the SME grant scheme. It's going to be a relatively quick introduction. The idea of this session really is just to let you know that we're here and briefly let you know how we can help. What we encourage interested parties to do is get in touch, and we can talk to you on a one-to-one basis. And that's really the best way to establish whether, firstly, you're eligible for support, and secondly, whether we are the most appropriate scheme to support you with whatever your ambitions may be. But the Eastern New Energy Programme, it's funded by something called the European Regional Development Fund, and it's led by the University of East London. It's quite a wide partnership. There's over 20 organisations involved in the programme. And the grant scheme that I'm going to be talking to you about in just a moment is a relatively small part of that programme. Generally, what the programme is trying to achieve is to basically support the low carbon agenda across the east of England, and working with quite a diverse group of not just organisations but individuals to achieve that. Just briefly, I thought I'd just give you a flavour for some of the things that the wider programme is engaged with. So if you're a business and you have a fleet of 20 or more vehicles, there's a strand of support there to help you look at how you can decarbonise your vehicle fleet, primarily looking at how you might move to electric vehicles. And there's a range of kind of consultancy-based support to help you make that move. Equally, if you're developing a new low carbon product or indeed a service, then there's some support available there to help you bring that to market. So there's a whole range of different things that Eastern New Energy is looking to support various organisations with. So even if the grant scheme it doesn't resonate with you, if you think anything else I've briefly mentioned does, then please do get in touch, and we'll see if there's anything else that the programme can do to support you. So moving on to the main thrust of my particular presentation and the grant scheme itself. It's a relatively straightforward proposition. The scheme has been created really to help small and medium-sized enterprises make those capital investments in either energy efficiency or renewable energy. At the moment, we're anticipating that the grant scheme is going to be available probably till the end of the summer, but given everything that's happened with COVID-19 and with Brexit, there is a possibility the scheme may be extended beyond that. Essentially, we'll be here until all the funding's been allocated, but at the moment we're talking about the scheme probably closing towards the end of the summer, just to give you an idea in terms of the time frame. In terms of who we can help, I'm not going to go into lots of detail now, but there are eligibility criteria that you need to meet. So unfortunately, it's not available to all businesses. But basically, if you meet the standard definition of a small or medium-sized enterprise, then it's highly likely that we're going to be able to support you. And I think it's something like 96–97% of businesses do fall into that category. So if you're based in Cambridgeshire, as I'm expecting most of you are, you employ less than 250 people, your turnover is less than £50 million, and you've not had more than €200,000 of state aid in the last 3 years, then there's a very, very good chance that we're going to be able to help you. There are some sectors we can't support. I haven't listed them all here, but if you're involved in one of the primary industries such as agriculture or food processing, that's an example of a sector we can't support. But again, if this is of interest to you, just get in touch and we can quickly establish whether we can help you or not. In terms of the support that's available through the grant scheme, we don't just offer out grants, we offer energy reviews as well. I'm just going to very briefly talk you through both of those offers. So whilst quite a few businesses will come to us with what we call a kind of an oven ready project, so they know exactly what it is that they're looking to potentially invest in, but they've got that financial barrier that they can't overcome. Equally, we get businesses who aren't actually really sure where to start when it comes to energy efficiency or renewable energy. So they don't know whether maybe they should be looking at their lighting, should they be looking at their heating, maybe insulation is the key driver they should be looking at, and they're not really sure about the merits of investing in renewable energy. So we offer the energy review service. It's fully funded, it's impartial, so it's independent advice from one of our energy advisors. We've got no ties to any particular technology or any particular suppliers, so you can be reassured that we're only going to be recommending things to you that will be genuinely beneficial to your organisation. Typically, the review involves a site visit to obviously look around your premises, understand how you're using energy, and then identify the key opportunities for improvement, and where there might be some potential for you to look at renewable energy generation. Now, obviously, at the moment, we're all working in challenging times, but we are continuing to offer site visits where that's a viable option for you as a business. We have got some very strict COVID-19 protocols that we're adhering to when we do our site visits, and we will share those with you. And if you're happy and we're happy, then we can do the site visit. Equally, if that's not possible at the moment, then obviously we can postpone any site visit until such time that you're ready to receive us on site. Once the visit has been completed, we'll provide you with a concise report. So you're not going to get a 50-60 page report that's going to take you hours to wade through. The idea behind the report is to focus in on the key opportunities, the ones where there are significant cost savings, relatively short payback periods, to help you identify where you might want to invest as the first part of your kind of energy efficiency journey, if you like. We do have some limited follow-up support. It's via email and via the phone, but generally it's there to help you understand the report. But that can potentially extend to things like, for example, if you have a board of directors and maybe you want us to do a short presentation summarising the findings of the report, then we can certainly look at doing that as well. Moving on to the grant funding then. It probably sounds an obvious thing to say, but our grants are only available to projects that are going to reduce energy use. So they're going to reduce your carbon footprint. And equally, it's not just a case of that there must be some kind of energy saving. There has to be a kind of value for money proposition as well. So we will look at the potential for your project to reduce carbon emissions, and we will measure that against the size of the grant that you're looking for. And I'll come on to some of the technologies that we can and can't fund in just a moment. Excuse me. Our intervention rate is up to 25%. More specifically, it will be between 20 and 25%. So if you qualify for a grant, that's the sort of percentage that we would contribute. It's retrospective, so you would pay 100% of the costs. And once you provided the required evidence that your project has been completed and paid for, you would then get the grant that's been agreed with you. Maximum grant is £60,000, so potentially we could be supporting some fairly large and complex energy or renewable projects through this scheme. It's probably equally worth mentioning that our minimum grant is £1,000, so that actually means that we can't unfortunately fund projects under £4,000. So there's a minimum expenditure that you would have to meet as well to qualify. Just in terms of what can and can't be funded, I won't go through this sort of line by line, but just to give you a feel for what we can and can't do. Things like LED lighting, we've already heard mention about the significant cost savings that you can achieve through an investment in LED lights. That's something that we're very interested in hearing about, and that's pretty much guaranteed that we would fund that if you meet all the other eligibility criteria. Solar PV is really resonating with small businesses at the moment. I think we've had somewhere in the region of 25 inquiries this month, and about 80% of them are around solar PV. So lots of businesses really interested to know at the moment how they can generate their own electricity, reduce their reliance on the grid, and of course realise the associated cost savings of doing that. There are a few things we can't fund. We won't fund anything around building fabrics, so insulation, for example, is not something that we fund, and we're not funding electric vehicles or electric charging points because there are other government subsidies available for those. The only other one to highlight, I think, is around heating. We're not funding gas boilers, and we heard mention earlier about the decarbonisation of the grid. So the university has kind of set this programme alongside the government ambition to kind of reduce reliance on gas boilers. So that's not something that we'd be able to fund, but there are other heating technologies that we can potentially look at and see whether they're viable for you. And as I say, that's just a very brief overview. There are other things that we can support, and we can discuss those with you. We've only been going a relatively short period. We only issued our first grants just before Christmas, so we're not actually at the point where I can actually share any Eastern New Energy case studies with you. But what I wanted to do was just briefly mention a previous programme, a very, very similar programme that PECT ran until June of last year, called the Business Energy Efficiency Programme. We supported about 300 SMEs on that particular programme, and 16 of those were from South Cambridgeshire. And 9 of those businesses went on to make a grant application. They invested collectively, they invested £130,000 in energy efficiency measures and reduced their carbon footprint collectively again by about 65 tonnes per annum. But those businesses received just under £31,000 in grant funding. So I just wanted to flag that, to make you understand that this is a very real opportunity, and we're keen to help businesses in South Cambridgeshire. If you're interested in reading a little bit more about some of those businesses and some of the others that we help, then there are some case studies available on our previous projects website, and obviously in due course, hopefully in the next few weeks, in fact, we'll have some case studies for the Eastern New Energy programme as well. So just lastly, if you want to register your interest, then we're very keen to speak to you. What we encourage you to do is email us at our project email address, which is on the screen there. I'm guessing the slides will be shared to you afterwards, so you can get that information from the slide. And then what we'll do is we'll have a very brief sort of conversation with you, just to sense check your eligibility and the project that you're interested in taking forward. What we really try hard to do is avoid any form filling on your part unless we know that we're going to be able to help you. So we try and keep your time commitment to an absolute minimum unless we're actually going to be able to offer you some support. So that's it really from myself. The contact details for the scheme are on the screen there. But again, I'm guessing the slides will be shared, so you'll be able to pick that information up. And like Claire and the other presenters, very happy to take any questions in the Q&A session. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks very much, Anthony. Really, really interesting. So thank you to everybody for that. I'm aware of time, so we'll move straight into questions. So the first question, I think, refers to the first presentation. So the chart showed 95% carbon reductions by 2050. I think this was on the South CAMBS building. How will you close the final gap? So that is a really interesting question. As I said to begin with, the ambitions for the project changed during the project, going from sort of more conservative energy saving measures to zero carbon. So the proposal was quickly adapted to try and get as close to net zero as we can by 2050. There are other measures on the building. As I touched on during the presentation, the building is old. One of the areas that I think is being looked at the moment is the roof for the building, and I'm sure there's options as to whether we can actually replace the roof, which I think would really close that gap with regards to energy efficiency. So it's something we're working on. I don't have a definitive answer today, but definitely a driver for looking at how we would do that within the building. But please feel free if you've got any further questions on that. Second question, can the size of the slide be adapted to the screen? Apologies for that. I hope you saw the slides okay. But the presentation will be available on the South CAMBS website if you wanted to go back and have a look at anything. And then we've got a longer question here. Attenborough recently said consumerisation, e.g. people buying so much stuff, is killing the world, e.g. CO2 shipping from China, raw materials, etc. How can we lobby to get more information on packages or websites to show the environment impact of one product to another, e.g. a traffic light system like the fat, sugar, salt, etc. So it's easy for people or businesses to make decisions that support the environment or UK businesses. I'm probably going to pass that over to the panel. Ethne or Claire, can either of you kind of shed some light on that, please?
Shall I dip in first, Claire? And if you obviously do add in. I think this sort of thing is coming. The problem is at the moment we've got a sort of a plethora of different labels that cover a different variety of things, all of which, most of which are really good in their own right, but it means that, yeah, you would need a government measure that was sort of universal, like the traffic lighting system. And that's quite complex depending on what you want to cover. Obviously in a traffic light, if you are looking across, you know, effectively a range of sustainability issues, not just the climate impact. Not to say it's impossible, but I do think blockchain is going to be really interesting. I think when that becomes more widespread and we can really secure the data so we know the claims people are making about their products really, you know, are verifiable, particularly when they do have longer supply chains, which unfortunately lots of products globally do have very long supply chains. So I think that will come. Your question, how to lobby, I think the most effective lobbying organisations in the UK are NGOs. So effectively, of course, you can write to your MP, you can make your views known to local councillors who I'm sure will share that desire. But I think it's about finding the right NGOs who've got that on their agenda, or effectively starting a petition, that sort of thing. But yeah, that would be my view.
I don't really have anything to add. I would have said something fairly similar, and perhaps, you know, if that's something you're interested in, perhaps that's something that you might like to approach individual companies that you like to purchase from and let them know how important it is to you, you know, whether that's broader environmental impact, carbon footprint, whatever, and try to encourage those companies to reduce their footprint. But yes, absolutely. Yeah, getting some sort of label does require some sort of lobbying, and I think Ethna covered that quite nicely.
Thank you, Ethna and Claire. So we don't have any further questions at the moment. I think as previously been said by all the panelists, if you would like any further information from any of us, then do feel free to email us. This will be available on the South CAMBS website. I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for coming along and sharing their expertise this afternoon. So thank you to Miles, Ethna, Claire and Anthony. And thank you to Paul Jenkins-Green from our Business Development Officer at South CAMBS for putting this all together with his colleagues as well. And thank you to all the attendees for coming and showing your interest. And I hope it has sparked some interest this afternoon. Please do feel free to visit the websites which each of the panelists have mentioned, and also the South CAMBS Business Support and Climate Change pages on our website. I think all attendees, you will receive a feedback survey, so please do fill it in and send it back to us so we can improve our future webinars. And thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties. And I think that brings the webinar to a close. Thank you, everybody.